going on? So I did a video called the Wildlands Project, and there's a lot more. And so I'm going to do part two of this because this one's going to talk about the Clinton administration, how they took all the land and things we don't even know about, how the rest of the world is doing the same thing. And it's going to be about wildlands projects all over the world. And it's going to also be about land grabs and what kind of land grabs and how to get away with it. And so, right now, probably over 50% of the United States is already owned by the government. And there is already in place the Wildlands Project. And the Wildlands Project is where they're taking the land in America and going to take 50% of it and turn it into cores for wildlife. And then they're going to do another 20-30% of the land into corridors where wildlife can go from one core to another. And then they're going to do buffer zones. And if you watch my video from yesterday, it gets into that. So today's going to be a little bit different. This is a bigger scale. It's way bigger than one could imagine. So I'll jump around and I'll even get to Trump at the end, and we'll skip Obama this time, all right? But we'll definitely get into Clinton. And so in the World Economic Forum, they had a global risk report in 2019, and basically this all goes back 2019. It goes back years and years to where we need to change our planet, and so basically, it's about biodiversity loss and the ecosystem collapse. Okay, and so you know the problem is we're having millions of plants and animals are facing extinction. Okay, and you know there's a lot of studies on that, and that's kind of a problem. We also do a lot of things wrong, and we'll talk a little bit about grass too. I got a little section about grass that we can do right now and fix. Um, climate change has a lot to do with it, but it's more the humans, okay, and not so much climate change. And so we're the ones pulling down. According this is not my opinion, okay. This is a global risk report from 2019, okay. I'll throw my opinion in because a lot of the stuff is BS. Oh, I think some of it is, okay. So they were pulling down landscapes and forests and grasslands, and basically the big issue here is that there's not enough space for the animals to live. And the biggest thing is about carnivores, wolves and bears. And we talked about they need a large space, and even spaces like the size of Yellowstone aren't big enough. But the Canadian Rockies are. And Clinton actually introduced, when he took all the land, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. He introduced, there's a map you could look up to where Clinton put wolves and bears into these areas where they did a lot of land grabbing. And the reason they're doing it is because they're transforming all of America. In 1991, they came out with the Wildlands Project. And in 1992 was Regional De Janeiro, which was Agenda 21. And then now we've had Agenda 30 and Agenda 50, which are derivatives of Agenda 21. And most people don't know about any of this stuff, okay? And so they introduced the wolves and the carnivores back then. And actually, a lot of the species that were facing extinction started to get, not worldwide, but in these areas. And basically, and I'm not going to say the word basically, Marco, quit saying that word. And so it worked, okay? And so now we're at full swing and we're doing a lot of things. Now, a couple other problems are that we need pollinators and we have invasive species, and we get the wrong species in the wrong places. They come on boats and ships and trucks, and we have traveling, and so it's a big problem. And also, we don't have enough pollinators, and pollinators basically are bees. And an example of that is in America, we all have these grass and lawns. I mean, this is one of the dumbest things we could do. And why would you have grass? And what you do is you cut the dandelions down so you don't have you don't have the bees. You just and then you spray it with herbicides, and so you have no bees, you have no moths, you have no butterflies, you have no flies, but you get green grass. And there's only a couple types of green grass species, so it's not like you're helping the world by having grass. And then you want to run downtown with your little green flag and pretend you want to save the world, and here you got green grass, okay, which is killing the world. And in some of these books, it talks about that and how we could change it. Maybe you could plant broccoli if you don't want to eat it. It still has flowers. It attracts bugs. You can eat it. It looks pretty. So there's a lot of things we could do as far as change the tapestry of our properties. Okay. And maybe what you could do is grow chamomile, a lot of flowers. You can make tea out of it. You know, thyme, thyme. Did I say that right? So there's a lot of things we could do to help. And grass is just a bad idea. But anyways, I'm getting off topic here. So basically, the governments have to worry about this biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse all over the world. And so there's a couple things. They must do this globally, all right? And they want to balance it for, they say, food security, and this is where the big agro comes in. And I'll tell you in a few minutes how I'm not sure that's working. And then they need to change migration. An example of that, like changing migration, would be that we have songbirds that need deep forests to lay eggs, or the cowbirds contaminate the nest, and then the songbird babies die because the cowbird egg takes over. And so then we have extinction, and we need bigger forests, and we got to change migration, but that's very complicated. We can't have grazing, okay? We have to have animals that eat deer because the deer eat the trees and the elk eat the trees, so we don't have large forests. So this whole Wildlands Project is trying to speed this up and help this up. And so also the biofuels. I'm not going to get into biofuels and get rid of fossil fuel and things like that. But these are the things that the whole world's doing. And so, there's a bunch of factors that affect this, okay? And, they have these world meetings at the United Nations and all over the world. We never pay attention to them. We just see them on TV, like our president went to this conference or that conference. But man, you really should see what they're doing at these conferences. They're changing the world. They're completely changing the world. And so, in this casual factors, we'll just use the word casual factors are population and then consumption, okay? And also resource efficiency. And consumption, people who consume more tend to destroy the planet. And like so rich people consume, educated people consume, so less education, less consumption. That's their idea. I mean, think about why they came up with Common Core math and what they do in these schools now with these kids. They mix up the smart kids with the dumb kids. That way the smart kids don't get smarter. You think it's an accident? No, it's not an accident. And so they want to lower consumption, okay? They want to lower the population and or they don't want to lower it. They it could be lowered, right? And so then you have what's called indirect drivers, okay? And I have some notes, okay, because I'm trying to stay in line here. Indirect drivers, and basically the things that drive all this are agriculture and forests, fishing and hunting, urban industry, water use, and we'll talk about water use and virtual water use here in a minute. And then basically these are the indirect drivers, okay? And then of course we have what's called direct pressure that pressurizes the biodiversity and the ecosystems, and that is habitat loss and fragmentation. Fragmentation is a word I defined in my first video where we put roads in and we put bridges in and dams in and we put farms in and we destroyed the land. We took the land and we put farmland in it, so there's no big forest. And without big forest, you don't have carnivores. Without carnivores, you screw up the ecosystem and you start to have species loss. And so that's this whole thing that they're doing with it's called the Wildlands Project, and they're called different things in different parts of the world. And I'll tell you some of them. And so another couple of things they say: we overexplore places, and we have invasive species that shouldn't be here, and then pollution, and then of course carbon CO2, which is you know humans. Okay, and so there are certain things we could do. Okay, and it's called global biodiversity. What we could do as far as to fix the diversity issues that we're having, we have what's called a provision service. Okay, and this is controlling the food, the medication, the timbers, fiber, and bioenergy. And there are, you hear about that stuff every day, right? And the food is like Big Agro, Monsanto's, and they say they're going to feed us with better food. I don't know about that. Regulating services, we have water filtration. Yeah, how good was that? That's the people in Detroit, right? When they had lead in the water, um, waste decomposition, climate regulation, okay, crop pollination. We talked about the bees, and we're killing the bees, and how we're doing it. We're doing it with a lot of ways, with a lot of times with herbicides, pesticides, um, and then of course we got to do some regulation of of human disease, which we're doing too, right? The new thing that came out, we all got to get the poke, right? And so these are things they call, regulating, that are going to help this. And then, of course, there's supporting services and, nutritional cycling, photosynthesis, making sure the soil, and I'll kind of skip all this stuff, okay? And so, you know, bad would be, like wheat and rice. Okay, they're going to control the food, and they're going to, wheat and rice generally aren't good. There's really no nutrition to it, right? And so, it makes some people sick, right? And so they want to, it causes malnutrition too to poor countries, where grew good would be like fruit, which we need bees for, right? So this all together, how they want to fix it, okay? Um, Now, how are they doing a lot of this? They've been doing it for a while, and we're going to call it the global land grab. Then we'll get into the Clinton land grab, and there's a lot of myths about it. But the global land grab, um, and there's an article published in 2013 called "A Premier TNI um, Justice Program." You could look it up if you'd like, and they talk about land grabs, okay? And there's different types of land grabs, all right? So some of the land grabs are large, very large, huge land grabs. Like an example would be when they did the land grabs in Madagascar and Ethiopia, where they basically just took tons of land. And the idea was that they're going to take this land and they're going to farm it, and then they're going to, and the land was like nobody was in the land. It wasn't being used, and these big companies came in there, and the little farmers got put out. And there were little farmers there that were supporting the local people. Now the big people are in there, they kick out the small people, they take away the good food, and things don't quite happen the way they say they want them to happen. And so there's a lot of that going on all over the world, especially in poor countries. Okay, they call that um, basically when they take land, water, of course they take everything, right? The land, water, minerals, and forest, and they do this especially to vulnerable places. Now they also have what's called virtual land grab. That's where they'll loan money, and a lot of the virtual land grabs happen in the states where farmers need money to get bailed out because they had a crop problem, or they had a drought, but now the bank kind of owns the land, so they're kind of like they're hostages, okay? And so those are called virtual land grabs, and these banks go all over the world, and another thing is they do it because they need a place to put their money also, right? And now the land is the collateral. You know what happened? This happened in India 20, 30 years ago. A lot of the Indian farmers lost all their land, right? In Africa, they're losing all their land. And so you got virtual land grabs going on, okay? And you never hear about any of this stuff. You never hear the details. A lot of times they're secret. You don't even know exactly how much is being done, but it's all being done simultaneously. Okay. Um, so um, you have virtual land grabs. Okay. Now, the word land grabbing is a bad word. Okay. They don't like to use that word, and it's a bad word. So what they like to use is the word control of land. So when you see something in any publication, control of land, it's land grab. Okay, just remember that. Okay, and we're talking, large thousands of hectares of land. Okay, I mean, huge pieces of property. So there are some myths. Okay, and and these myths are wrong. They say, well, why do we have to do it? Well, the reason we do this land grab is to create jobs. Never happens, and for these are usually countries that have poor people. Also, because of the three U's I call unpopulated, unused, and unproductive. Totally wrong because they tell you that and they take the land and they're not. There's little farmers and peasants living on these properties, and they have little gardens, and they're feeding the people. Now they're kicked off. They got nowhere to live, and they don't feed them. Okay. Then we have what's called myth two. Okay, and that's because they call it agricultural um, investments. Okay, and we need foreign investments. These are big banks that do this. Okay, and once again, the small farmers are getting kicked out. In America, the small farmers here are getting kicked out. Okay, they've been kicked out for years. I mean, you hear a story here and there, and you'd be surprised, how they do this. Myth three is, well, we need to do this because, we need food, scarcity of food, scarcity of oil. Um, First of all, we have a lot of food to feed people. It's just a lot of wasted food that's going on. And we have plenty of oil. Okay. And then they kind of make it sound like we don't have oil. Okay. And then, of course, they must have, they want to stop the fossil fuel use and they want to have renewable energy. So green fuel is what they use. And so myth three is a myth. Okay. And, we have a lot of food and, they want to, they want to perceive that that's what they're doing. Then there's of course myth four, and um, that's the crazy one. That's the one that says, well, you don't really own the property anyways. Nobody can own property. The property's never was yours. That's a myth four. It is your property. If you own it, you bought it during whatever your lifetime. Okay, and so what happens here? So you get like these big corporations, and I have a friend where these people, my friend's wife, they were very rich. They owned all kind of land, and and the government, their government, took it all, and they came here with nothing, and so all because of these land grabs. There was one in Guatemala. They took 5,400 hectares. Okay, and they kicked everybody out. Then there was, and this was all, and this was back in the 2000s. So these are just examples, okay? And here's one, the Pollock Valley, and here it was 2001. They took, was it a lot? I don't have how many hectares, but they basically evicted 700 people. These are just little examples that were in this paper. This happens on bigger scale, like in Florida, they had a land grab, and that land grab was because they changed the around the Everglades. They needed more land because they needed a bigger core. That way they could have more species, right? So they kicked out what they took 16,000 people's land from them in Florida. This is just recently, okay? And historically, land grabs been going on from day one. Okay, the Kings did it. They in the U.S. we did it. We came here, right? What we do? Kick the Indians out. We grab their land, right? So land grabs been going on for a while. Okay, now how are they, doing the new land grabs? Okay, now that's what's happening now. Trend one is where they're taking homes. Now, hey, what's happening is, first of all, they took a ton of took homes away and foreclosed what 33 million homes in 2008, right? Was that a real mortgage crisis? Yeah, you think it was? No. Okay, no, it wasn't. I mean, in the news it was, but That was 33 million homes they took. What are they doing now? Okay, now everybody that has a house gets called 5 times a day. Somebody wants to buy it. Big corporations are, buying homes up all over America, and this is what's happening with a lot of our residential. And I have a 1 hour video on Agenda 21, and it talks about that. And then I have another video on the Wildlands Project, which talks about that. So this whole country, there's nothing normal happening here. It's all been planned. It's all being transformed. And so now, in trend one, like I'm surprised I didn't get a phone call today. I usually get 2 phone calls. Somebody wants to buy my house, buy my cottage. And it's these big companies, okay? These big money companies, Berkshire Hathaway, there's a bunch of them. And they're buying up all the houses. So, it's not just these flippers that are buying them and flipping houses. There's a bunch of them guys because everybody wants to do over, get night rich, clean. So then you have what's called global food. Okay, that's where they want to control all the food. They want to get rid of the small farmers. And you hear about it here in the States, but they're doing it everywhere, simultaneously in South America and just basically everywhere. And we don't hear about it because we're too busy looking at what's on sale, and what we're going to order delivered to, we're going to order cookies delivered to our front door. And so we talked a lot about that in my other videos. I'm not going to get into too much of that. And the other thing is that the first one, which was collapse of housing, the trend one, I failed to make a comment that banks are looking to put their money somewhere. Why do you think they're buying up all our houses? There's something going on with their money. Okay, I mean, if you look at Agenda 21 in my other video, I talk about a couple things, and one of them is a cashless society, and I gave you all kind of examples in that video, and that's happening. I mean, people don't have cash. These kids, they get cards, they got Venmo, they got PayPal, they got Cash App, they got all that stuff, and then you got the cryptos, right? And what's happening to the dollar? It's inflate. I mean, they're printing money up these last 3 years. Everybody was sick, right, from that cold. How much money do you think they printed up to pay the pharmaceutical people? Think about that. That was money right out of your pocket. Plus, you got inflation, devaluation and so these banks are buying up the houses because they know that they want to own some land and they want to own properties because that's not going to crash. Because the lands, you're always going to, especially when people got to live in a house, you're going to be paying rent. You're going to be a slave. All right. So the other one was energy response, and that's about oil. Okay, and I think I talked a lot about that, and I won't totally get into that right now. And environmental climate change. Okay, so environmental climate change is a big topic. So trend two, okay, is where the big companies are going to go out and buy stuff. So, for example, in Nigeria, they took 30. By the way, hectare is 2.5 acres. So whenever I say these numbers, multiply it by 2.5. So 30,000 hectares in Nigeria is really what 80,000 acres. They took it, to do rice, and then and so on. And this was a U.S. company that went and did this. And they just go in there, take the land from these people. It's a land grab, and they cut some deals. Okay, then they did 60,000 hectares in Cambodia for sugar cane, and 100,000 acres for trees. And these aren't trees to plant to create oxygen. These are trees to cut for wood. And they did 900,000 acres. Okay, and an Italian company in Argentina. So these are just 3 examples. This is insane what's going on with these big companies. They're getting bigger and bigger, and we're getting smaller and smaller. And it's all part of Agenda 21. And Agenda 21 just isn't America, it's the whole world. I mean, in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, 18,000 people hung out there. 100 countries signed on to it, including America, in 1992. And then everything has been changing since then. There's a reason why they don't fix roads, bridges, and dams, okay, in these wildlands project zones, because they can't have them, because they cut the land up, and then you can't have the wildlife going from one area to another. So they're moving us, okay. And then the other was trend three. Okay, this one is called leases, long-term leases. Sometimes they're 30 years, sometimes they're 10 years. And like they may go to a farmer that's hurting and say, okay, here's a deal. You can do this, but you can't do that. And so they basically own the land and you give them some money. And so some of them, these leases, long-term leases are happening. These are basically land grabs, okay, in disguise. And so they're happening in Africa, South America, Central America, right? Us, Central America. Not so much in Canada because Canada already had all these wildlands projects going on for decades. I mean, half of Canada is a wildlands a map. All right, and so then trend four is the trend four is the we have fragile ecosystems. Okay, and because they're small, we have a lot of parks, and parks aren't big enough for the wildlands project type core areas, and so they're very fragile. And I did talk a lot about that in other videos, and so you know they're doing this a lot of different ways. Okay, land grabbing. Okay, um, some of the large scale land grabs, like 20 million hectares, were taken. Okay, and that's what 50 million acres in 2000 between 2005 and 2009. Okay, and then they said that 45 million were taken alone in 2007, 2008. They're not, and these land grabs stop in my notes to 2011. So just imagine there's another 10 years after that. 227 millions of acres were taken, okay, in land grabs between 2000 and 2011, okay. And a lot of times they're just land deals. Um, and here's the thing: a lot of them are secret deals. You won't even know. Some are even classified. They could be government classified, and so you'll never even know. You want to hear about it. They're just happening all around you, and before you know it, you're gonna be living in a stack and pack next to a bike path and a train station across the street. You'll be working out of your house because you won't be able to go visit across the country because there won't be a train going that way. You'll have to go to another stack and pack area. That's what Agenda 21 is. That's what the Wildlands Project is. And they have these projects, they're named differently. The World Wild. If you ever see the World Wild in something, like in Britain had it, they had things going on in Britain. I talked about that, I think, in another video. Um, and so water grabbing. Okay, this is crazy. So it doesn't talk about what I'll tell you about, but the water is kind of time specific, space specific, and they talk about water grabbing, and and here's the ones they tell you, the obvious ones: hydropower. And so they would grab water and put up a few dams, like in Brazil, the Belo Dam, the Meeking River Dam, in India, the Narmada Dam, and then of course you have mining. Okay, and a lot of this big stuff, pollution's happening in the biggest polluters. Okay, and the biggest polluters are going to be China. If you ever look at the Earth null skull maps, you could see who the biggest polluters are. Okay, and but here's the not so obvious, called virtual water. Now, this is something you don't even hear about because they don't want you to know about virtual water. Virtual water, and then you have total precipitable water, which is another thing they don't want to tell you about. And you'll never even hear about the total precipitable water because that's the water in the sky. How do we get the water? How do we precipitate the water in the sky? And a lot of people don't believe how they do this, but there's weather modification. But let's talk about virtual water. So virtual water is huge. So for example, we're going to raise sheep, okay? And so we're going to spend a ton, thousands of gallons of water to raise that sheep because the sheep's got to eat, and the sheep is going to damage our land, and it's going to screw up the biodiversity, and it's going to not, it's going to break up our forests, so we're not going to have the carnivores that we need to sustain a good population of animals, because it's all about animals. We aren't part of this program. We are put off to the side. Okay, the world's is about the animals. Okay, just remember that. That's what this is all about, not us. They don't care about us. And so virtual waters. So we take the sheep wool, and what we do, we put it on a ship. We send it to China. Now we spent, let's just say I have a pound of sheep wool and it took me 2,000 gallons of water, rainwater, well water, pond water, city water to make that sheep grow. Then China's going to get the wool and they're going to put a t-shirt together, probably with some 10-year-old, and they're going to use 2 gallons of water and they're going to ship it back. Who got screwed in this deal? Right, virtual water. America is the biggest virtual water exporter on this planet. We are exporting water to, and that's and that's the thing when you read these Agenda 21 stuff, they don't even talk. They talk about water, but they don't. These are things they don't even put in there because they want to compartmentalize even their own people. And if you don't like look at this and look at that and go look at this and see what he said and what they said, and then go to the other side of the world and see what this company said, you can't put it together because they don't want you to put. They just want you to be a walking zombie like those movies that are on Netflix. Okay, and this is what they want. They want a dumbed down zombie that lives in a little place, and you stay in your little place. And if you live in Ohio, you only get peaches, pears, and whatever you can grow in Ohio. You don't get bananas. But if you live in Florida, you don't get strawberries. You got to eat bananas and you got to eat oranges. This is the way it's going to be. This is the way it is. This is where it's going, and we are at full tilt now, especially with this cold that hit us for the last 3 years. It did a lot of damage, and so we export virtual water. Okay. Now you've got hundreds of companies that pay for rain. I mean, you can't ski without the seed generators they have on ground. They have hundreds and hundreds of seed generators that are incomplete combustion and put particles in the air and create clouds, and it snows and you get ski resorts. But skiing resorts are all closing, and so are the golf. You ever see how many golf courses have closed? Those all in Agenda 21 are not sustainable. Single family housing isn't sustainable. Air conditioning isn't sustainable. There's a whole list. And I did a whole hour video on it. You should check it out or look it up yourself. And so virtual water is a whole, and that's not even in, it's virtual water grabbing. It's not even anywhere to be found. It's hard. They split this up, make it very difficult to find. And so anyway, so that's water. Then we have what's called green grabbing. And these are all the new types of grabs. And green grabbing is, again, the Agenda 21. And we're going to talk about green grabbing. And it was going to be our President Clinton was a big time green grabber. Wait to hear this stuff. And so basically they say sell nature to save it. Okay, sell nature to save it. And so, and they had a whole thing called the United Nations Rio Plus 20 conference, which is in 2012, which is another Earth Summit because the first one was 1992 regional. So 30 years later, they met in 2012 and says, look, we're doing good because here's our book from 1992. We've done all this. Now we got to kick it up a notch. And they are kicking it up a notch. I mean, fast. Okay. I mean, the population is decreasing. It's crashing in many countries. Okay. We're having food issues. Okay. Even in America, where we are the biggest consumers and the biggest pigs of all. Okay. Because they want to totally break us apart. Okay. And they're in full swing at doing that. It's all about consumption because consuming is bad. And it is bad. If you think, you can look at this a couple different ways. I mean, I used to I couldn't stand this stuff. Now, kind of like, yeah, well, maybe some of this is, I don't know, maybe some of it's justifiable. But this is not an opinion video, all right? And so basically, that is the environmental one. That's the Wildlands Project, okay? To rewild the properties, and to take the land away, okay? And so that throws in all the other stuff too, like reducing emissions. They call it reducing emissions deforestation. When you hear that word, reducing emissions deforestation, which is REDD, that is the Wildlands Project. Okay, they just got a nice fancy word for it, and they did a test in United Kingdom. Okay, and the United Kingdom, I think they call it something different. and I probably got it written down. I might just throw it out there in a couple of minutes. But United Kingdom, they call it something different. It took 1.2 million hectares. Okay, and here's the thing about United Kingdom: there's 250,000 landowners, but there's only 1% of the entire public. So it's a whole different ball game there, okay? Compared to the US, we had a lot more landowners to take the land away. And the bottom line was they basically kicked those people out. And it pissed off all the people that were the local people who didn't own land. And then they took the land and they repurposed it for the Wildlands Project in England. So this that you can look that one up, okay? And so um, and I forget what that was called. The word wild was in there. Okay. And so there's a few things. Okay. Then they give you hope. Okay. Which hope, it's not, there's no hope here. We can't change this. Okay. You can just learn about it and just know what's going on, I guess. But they do have hope, and they call it systematic change, how we could change this, and how we could stop. And these are these big companies are called transnational corporations that go around and they buy up all the land on these all third world countries, and they say that they're all petro based, and they're neoliberals, which is basically capitalism, for the free market, and they're swiping out all the small farmers. Okay, and they said, well, what we could do is we could maybe let the farmers change. Okay, let the farmers. Here's what happened. We'll let the farmers fight. They try to put it together, and in one instance in Cambodia, I think it was in Cambodia. Yeah, Cambodia, 75,000 hectares of land. These transnational corporations try to get, so all the people got together like, you ain't taking our land, and they fought it and fought it and fought, and they said, fine, let them have it. So then what they did is once they produced their sugar, okay, the rest of the world said that it was called blood sugar because it was done by little children, and so they call this leapfrogging. So even if you can fight these big companies, as a small entity, a lot of farmers get together, they're going to leapfrog it and come up with other ways to make it not work for you. And so this happened in Cambodia, and basically then everybody boycotts their stuff, right? So it doesn't work. And then they also say that another thing that we could do is we could have, and this is homesteaders do this, where you could say, okay, make a balance, have animals, and you can look this up on YouTube. The homesteaders all do it. They got chickens and they use the chicken poop to do this, and you have agriculture. Yeah, it looks good. It's all fuzzy, but you can go do all that for a while. But when people when you're like in Colorado and they says you can't use water from your gutters to water your garden, or you can't pump water in California in your aquifer for your little small, you're making wine because they're depleting the aquifers, and they're using it for virtual water because they're transporting our virtual water to third world countries like China. Well, not third world country, but the China who has no virtual water. Um, so sure, the stuff all looks good, but you got to look at everything. You got to read everything, and then you got to put it together in your own mind. And I'll tell you what, man, there's a lot of bullshit going on here, a lot of it. And so Guatemala was another one, and I'm just going to skip this because I can go on. I got a bunch of examples how this is happening all over the world, and how they're doing these land grabs, okay, and how these little farmers are just getting whacked and destroyed. And a lot of these leases, they also use coercion, big time coercion, and so you there's all kind of bad things going on. So let's talk about USA, the Clinton administration. So basically, he was a very busy dude. Sure was. Because in 1990, the Sierra Club said, hey, we got problems. And in 1991, they came up with the Wildlands Project. And in 1992, Agenda 21 at Regional Degenal Earth Summit, which is going to change the fabric of America and has been going on for 30 years. Now we have the 2030 going on, the Agenda 2030. And it all started with Sierra Club when they said we had an endangered spotted owl. Now, I have a video where I talk about the spotted owl. The spotted owl, it just happens to be a species that is very vulnerable to ecological changes. And so this whole thing was because of a spotted owl. Well, probably not, because it goes in my other videos, it goes back in time. Okay. And so, a lot of things happened. Okay. So the Clinton administration basically took 630 million acres of land. Okay. Mostly on the West, on the Rockies, military bases, and of course, Indian reservations. Okay. And at one time, our government permitted grazing, lumbering and mining on our properties. Okay, they permitted it all, and then they says, "Wait a minute, no more grazing for you, no more mining for you, no more logging for you." I mean, they shut down the entire logging industry, and 200,000 people lost their jobs. Um, you don't hear about all that stuff. This is the Clinton administration. Then we had Obama administration. They're stealing land. Okay, and now well, I'll talk about the other two guys here in a second. And so here, this is crazy. When Bill Clinton he became president, of course, Mr. Al Gore, the green guy, right? Um, they basically in the year 2000 they shut down 300 timber mills. We're talking big time here, which is approximately 130,000 people lost their jobs, and this was land that they owned that they were letting them use, but not anymore because we can't cut wood down. We stopped all that, and then now we have fires because that wood was should have been taken out, right? Well, that was 4 billion, and so they went from making, and then you wonder why the wood prices went up and down and how they fluctuate. They were making 12 billion board feet of wood, and after this administration got done, it was down to 2.5 billion board feet. So basically, you know, they shut all that down, all right? And in 1990, they said there's 596 endangered species. And by 1999, we had 1,205 endangered species. So somebody comes up with this stuff. And then, of course, in 2000, Bill Clinton jumped into all this. And so what Bill Clinton did, there's a map. They took a ton of land. And let me see if I just tell you some of the land. Um, Well, we'll just skip all that. But it's 50%. It's 50% of America. Okay. And oh yeah, here we go. I got it right here. And just for example, okay, 45% of Arizona, 45% of it, 50% of California, 33% of Washington, 32% of Montana, 56% of Oregon, 66% of Idaho, 50% of Wyoming, 88% of Nevada, 68% of Utah, 36% of Colorado. The whole Midwest is already the Wildlands Project, okay? They own it. And Bill Clinton had a lot to do with taking more of it because, they had areas and then they started taking areas surrounding these areas. There's a whole section of America there's nobody there because of this. Um, and so, and it was all about endangered species. Okay. So what they did is he introduced wolves and grizzlies, and by getting more land and kicking people out and deforesting, they actually came up where it was working. And so now it's in full swing. So that no more grazing on the land, no more mining. Okay. And there's many other restrictions. All right. Now they also, this is just, there's a lot more stuff they did land grabbing. Okay. They took all beaches. I'm trying to find where I had that. So, okay. So here's some more land grabs from the Clinton administration. Um, the Grand Staircase, 1.7 million acres. And some of this stuff they should grab, okay? They should be parks, okay? That was in Utah, 1.1 million acres, Grand Canyon. Then there was the Aquafry in Arizona, 8,000, California. Oh, here we go. Imagine if you had houses on the coastline of California, and then someday they says, hey, you don't own that beach anymore. Well, they did that to 840 miles of beach land, beach people's front yards, okay? The uh, the uh, the beach in Hanford, 200,000 acres, okay? And so they're taking all the beaches, okay? They're, they took all the land from, yeah, the beaches, right, the beaches. And then there was all kind of other ones. I mean, there's just this list. I mean, we're talking millions of acres here. And so canyons of ancient in Colorado, 164,000 acres. Iron Forest, Arizona, 134,000. And it goes on. The list goes on and on. So Clinton did a huge land grab. And and of course, when you do the land grab, there's always side deals. So you wonder, you know, what's going on with all these side deals? You never hear about it. Here you go. 149 miles of the Missouri shoreline. Okay, they took. They took mountains. Okay, they took 6.6 million California. Okay, then you have what's called the California Desert Protection Act. So this stuff every year things happen. 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94 was the California Desert Act we talked about. And so you could just see how this is just escalating. This is getting huge. 15 million. When they did the biggest land acquisition was in 1994. Well, one of the biggest was 6.6 million acres. Okay, and that was they had 15 million that was donated from the Wildlands Conservatory. Okay, where's that come from? And then, here's another one: 150,000 miles of river, all riverbanks, all the riverbanks. If you had like land next to a river, you don't know the riverbank anymore. So they took away 150,000 riverbank miles. Okay, now now this is kind of like Al Gore. I mean, this guy's a hypocrite. Elk Hills was an oil reserve in California where it was 47,000 acres, and they produced 60,000 barrels of oil per day, and they had 400 million cubic feet of natural gas. So our government was in the oil and gas business for a little bit, okay, and that's what Trump tried to bring back. And so what did they do? Elk Hills. By the way, Al Gore's dad was the VP of this thing. Okay, so think about how much money he made. Okay, and they sold it to a company called Occidental Petroleum Corp for 3.6 billion, and they had stock in that company too. I mean, there's so many side deals going on. And so we got out. So his dad, okay, Al Gore's dad was in on this, and Al Gore's what, supposed to be the green guy, right? So we got out of the oil and gas business, and it's funny, after they did that, oil and gas prices skyrocketed. Okay, so the West Coast has already the Wildlands Project in full swing. It's just moving across the country now, and you're starting to see it with you know the signs are a lot of the bike paths. There's no money and grant given to small towns. If you drive through small towns, empty all over the country. There's nothing going on in a lot of these towns, and that's what I do. I take trips. When I came back from California, it took me 10 days, and I just drove to hundreds of towns, and I've just literally saw vacant towns with maybe an antique shop. And another thing that's happening now is they're using this. So why did they quit logging? Gee, yeah, this like the domino effect. So they stopped the logging. Okay, 40 million acres of land, no more logging for you, no more timber. So what happens is the old trees, right, diseased trees, and then if they steal some virtual water, precipitable water, what happens? They dry up, and then what happens? You get fires. So we have fires all over the place. Then when you have fires, it burns out more people, and then they make fire maps. And when you have fire maps, the insurance companies won't insure houses in fire zones. They won't the banks won't give you mortgages in fire zones. Same with the hurricane zones. I mean, you can't even insure a house in a hurricane zone. Once a house goes down, if you don't pay 10 grand or 8 grand for your insurance, you lost everything. And you're not going to be able to build a new one because the bank's not going to give you money on it because of this problem. And so you have all these fires going on too. There's all these fires, where these are huge fires back in year 2000. So these new fires you hear about in California, these fires are going on all the time. And why do you have more fires? It's because the government is not letting people log. They don't tell you everything. They want to blame blame it on all. They want to blame it. The one fire they blamed on the drought. It was called the Bitter Rest. It was a national forest that they took, okay, in 2000, and lightning hit. Yeah, lightning. Yeah, I don't believe the lightning fires, but they blamed it. They said it was a drought, the biggest drought ever. Okay, so they blame it on a drought, but really they should have blamed it on by stopping the loggers. Okay, and so there's all kind of fires here. I mean, even the fires we have today, and so the wildfires. They want to blame wildfires now on. I'm going to blame it on federal policies. Okay, that's what these kind of are. And another thing is they're halting road construction, road repairs, and all. Every time they gain land, they stop the roads. They don't fix them or they abandon them. And I go to a lot of places where roads are abandoned, like the Turnpike in Pennsylvania. There's a whole section of it that's abandoned. It goes through some mountains, and I bet if you looked at those are going to be core zones in the next 10 to 20 years. They do this stuff way in advance. Okay, it's all planned, and so you know sometimes you wonder like this. Now this was they said they collected. Okay, so they halt road construction. Okay, and they said that they lost a lot of revenue because of logging. Right, we talked about the revenue. Okay, I mean, where are you going to get we're going to come up. We're going to pay you $100 billion to make the difference. So there's a lot of unknown things that are going on. Okay, and so the next. Okay, we're going to skip the Obama land grab because this video is getting too long. But let's just jump into Trump. And so what did Trump do? Either this guy had no clue what this world's doing, but he wanted to make U.S. Remember, he energy dominant, and he says, "I did it." And it's pretty easy to make it dominant. All you got to do is go to the government land and drill a well because they own 50% of the West. So this is what Trump's idea was. We own the land. We're energy deficient. Let's go down and drill holes and get gas and all that. And it was a great idea. But because I'm not sure he knew or he did. I would think he would know that you can't do that because you can't change United Nations. You can't change every country on this planet that's on this Wildlands Project and Agenda 2030 and 2050 now. And they went through all this trouble to get all that land. I mean, it took decades to get it, right? So you're going to let some president go in and drill a couple holes and start becoming No, they're not going to let that happen. And I firmly believe that is why he didn't make it for 8 years. He got to 4 because they needed another goofball to come in there and change everything he did. So it's back to normal. Okay. So, this president we got now, Biden, he just brought it right back to Agenda 21, 2020. Agenda 21 is the start. 30 and 50 are just derivatives of it. Okay. And so it, you can't go against the United Nations and it doesn't matter if you vote and your vote doesn't count. It's an illusion. So that's what I think happened to him because he was going against Agenda 21 that all the other presidents were on board with. And I think that this video is kind of long enough. I'll do another one and a couple things that I didn't talk about. But just remember, they've been taking the land, they've been taking your water, they've been converting your food, they're moving you, they're not letting you be an individual. They want to fill you up with BS and propaganda. Okay, they want to alter your perceptions. They want to create your wants. They want to bamboozle you with the news. They'll tell you one thing while they're doing something else. I mean, you guys were so busy with Clinton and little Monica Lewinsky, okay? And while you guys, and I don't say you guys, we people, were busy worrying about Monica, because that was the distraction. He's taking all the land for everybody. He's taking all stopping all the cattle ranchers. He's stopping the mining. He's stopping the wood cutting. He's taking land from people. He's killing the farmers, and we're worried about Monica. And now we got this new president, and what are you guys worried about? Mumbling Biden. That's what you guys are watching, mumbling Biden, and we're busy making fun of him and worried about the next president. In the meantime, what's he doing? He's on a Wildlands Project, man, full swing. They're stealing virtual water. They're stealing precipitable water. They're creating droughts. They're kicking you off your land. They're enslaving you. They're feeding you poison. You're eating poison. They don't want you to eat meat. We'll do a whole video on the meat thing because it's not what you think. It's not because these kids, they show them a few videos. Like I got a kid that if you talk about meat, she pukes. She gets sick because something happened to her from one of her college indoctrinating professors. And so, it's not about, chicken factories where the chickens aren't properly taken care of. It's bigger than that. That's what they want you to think. So whatever you see and they want you to think it's not there. Monica Lewinsky, distraction, pure distraction. It's all distractions. And while we're being distracted, they're robbing us blind. They're land stealing, they're land grabbing, they're water grabbing, they're enslaving us. Before you know it, we're all going to live on top of each other. We're not going to have cars. We're going to be skinny. That'll be one good thing because we're all going to get skinny. They're going to make sure we're skinny. And I think we're done with this video. Hey, thanks for coming on. I do have a service for people because I really do is I'm a home inspector. Been doing it for 40 years. And so I still do inspections, but I also do call Mark with a question. A lot of people can't solve their problems. Their contractors can't. And I'm pretty good. I could do it for 15, 20 minutes. I ask you a few questions, show me a few pictures on a phone. We'll solve your house problem, whatever it is. Also, I give second opinions, so you can just Google Call Mark with a question. Also, please rate, subscribe, hit the bell for future videos. I'll try to make them shorter. Sorry about it. And if you want to, I have some shorts. They're all 15 seconds long. They're just jokes. Because in the morning, I just got to say a couple jokes. I usually make a lot of them up. I do steal a few from here and there, but I probably got 100 of them there. So if you want to just hit shorts. If you want to see more of these types of videos, hit live. And then I have another 800 videos on my main channel. So please rate, subscribe, call Mark with a question, and like. Thanks for coming on.